Okay, welcome back. So this is part 4 of my technology portfolio, and I just want to discuss a couple ways I would use QR codes in my classroom and what I love about them. So I love, first and foremost, that they can add physical activity into an English language arts classroom. I could have students perform scavenger hunts, solve a mystery, basically research an item. And these QR codes will get kids out of their seats. I can put them codes around the room or down like one hallway if I have a class that I can trust. And so instead of the students just being handed materials, they could find the articles online or with the way I link them just by using a QR code. I also like the idea that the QR codes could help me communicate with my students, so I could post a code on the front of my door for students at the beginning of class. Instead of writing the bell ringer activity up on the board, they could just scan the code to find what the bell ringer activity is for the day. And while that's not a huge difference, it's something different for them. Not something maybe to do all the time, but something that they could do and make it a little bit more fun. Would also be a great way to remind them of something when they're leaving the class. Say maybe there's always going to be a QR code link for the homework assignments for that week or important due dates. I want to also integrate a few other things into my classroom, so I'm just going to briefly reference these ideas. I like the idea of using codes for small group discussions. So I could have one QR code at each table, at each station, and the students could just scan it, discuss the topic, and then they rotate. So they're constantly moving around, they're using technology to get the questions, and then they're discussing it together at their station. I also like the idea of students going around the room while I play some music, and whatever code they're near when the music stops will be their topic for the day, or for instance, their literary element that they're going to research and present later that week. So more of a random assignment usage for the code. Okay, so now we're going to talk about screencasting, which is what I'm doing right now for this presentation. And screencasting is a video recording of your computer screen, normally with some audio narration. For this particular presentation, I'm using Screencast-O-Matic. Be careful if you are going to use this because there's a couple other programs that come up, Screencast-O-Matic. This is the one you want if you're going to use it. It's a free screen recorder that records your computer screen. You can put vocal narration on it, and once you're finished creating your project, which if you're going to use the free one, you can only, I think it's 15 minutes it will allow you. But you can make as many as you want. Then you can directly link it to your YouTube account. You could load it up to Screencast-O-Matic itself, or you could just save it to your computer. And what I did was I went into my login, and I logged in, and then I hit start recording, which I don't think it'll allow me to do since oh, it will, okay. So yeah, you can upgrade it, but if you just do the regular one, it will come up. Let me see if I can bring up. It'll bring up a screen like this that you'll put around what you want to film. Whoops, sorry about that. It'll put a screen up around, and then you can choose whether you just want the screen to be visible, if you want you to be visible, or both. You can have both up, and there's a lot of different settings you can change, but ultimately it's giving your audience a shot of what's going on the screen itself that you have bordered. So it doesn't have to be your whole screen, but there's a border that'll come up. So how would I use this in the classroom? Well, I think it'd be beneficial for students who missed class. So I could post a screencast of what we did on my YouTube page. I could post the link, or even a fancier way is I could put a QR code on the classroom blog to take students to the presentation to catch up on what they missed. Although I think that it's wonderful, but at the same time, I think knowing me, it'll take me a long time to remember to do something like that. I actually like the idea of using this as well with a flipped classroom idea in mind where I would present something on a screencast and have students that be their homework, and they watch it, and then they come in ready to engage and work in groups the following day with what they know, what they bring to the class from that. The challenge with that is that we still have to hold everybody accountable in the groups. So I I really like using it that day in class, but we'll see how that would work. So there's a lot of benefits again to have students get another tool that can help them present or that could give them content outside of the classroom. All right, so now we're going to talk about copyright law, which is very important for my students to understand and be familiar with. Not only do they need to cite all their sources just from the internet for research with writing papers, but they also need to be citing their technology sources they use, photos, videos, and they need to be aware that copyright law itself protects published and unpublished materials as long as they're in a tangible format. So they still have to get permission from a creator if the product or the image or the video is copyrighted. And materials that fall under public domain can be freely used for any purpose by anyone. So what I did when I created my project was I tried to find images, for instance, that were, I pulled this up for a reason. So let's just say we're looking for heart images. Okay, so we're going to come here to, I pulled up heart images. We're going to go to license, and we can look at Creative Commons or public domain, and then it has other categories: free to share and use commercially. Let's just go to public domain and see what comes up. So there's tons of hearts that we could use that are free to use without having to worry about getting creators' approval. And if we go to Creative Commons, same thing. So we still want to cite our sources. It's just always a good habit to do that. We have to do that. But these are, legally speaking, accessible to us to use. The creators have given their permission. So this is what I tried to do, and I used Bing for my images, and I tried to find what fell under those categories. So I was using things that were legal, still using my references, but at least the creator gave permission for the images I used. And while there can be some gray area when considering the logistics of what is called fair use, which means that portions of the material were given consent. You're given consent by the creator to use portions of the material, and there's more logistics to that. It's a bit of a gray area, so I would advise my students that if there's a copyright symbol on an image or a video, they need to ask the creator's permission 100%. And regardless, they always need to cite their resources. But in my projects, I cited all of my images and videos that I found, even under the Creative Commons categories. And the videos that I used in the infograph were TED Talks, and those are allowed to be used as long as there's references included. So it's also, I think, about teaching students how to choose sources that are appropriate for educational and academic purposes. The last thing we're going to talk about is Padlet. And the Padlet wall, it's an interesting tool. I used it in a course recently, and it didn't seem to work very well. So let's see if there's anything on here. I don't have anything saved. Okay, so I don't have any Padlet wall images saved, but I did find some that are free to share and use under Yahoo search. So you can scroll through the website. I'm not going to belabor this. But basically, the wall itself, you can have students post there, as long as they have your passcode or your link to your Padlet wall as the teacher, they can just post randomly, and it'll come up on the wall. So maybe this is a neat one here. See, somebody did a map, and then they had students or somebody posted. It's something that can happen all at once or at random. I remember doing an example of this in my first tech ed class, where the professor had the Padlet wall already up and simply asked us to answer a question, and we put something in on the Padlet wall. That's a great way to have students just initially respond to a big question, and really activate their prior knowledge about a topic. And then we could go from there. The way it was used recently in one of my courses was that we posted an actual writing prompt for our classmates to view, and too much writing, I think, is not a good idea for the Padlet wall. This needs to be short, concise, a blip, and we go from there. We're not going to have so much information. So I think there's a place for Padlet in the classroom, to like I said, maybe talk about prior knowledge, and maybe they could comment. For instance, if I said, what are some strengths and weaknesses you remember from a speech you recently heard? Students could post up their strength, weakness, and then they could rate something in, and then we could begin the discussion. But I wouldn't have students write a lengthy paragraph or more. So this brings me to the close of my portfolio. I hope you had a nice overview of the presentations that I've put together for this semester. I did receive a lot of knowledge about individual activities I could use in the classroom, and ways that I could really help all learning styles engage with materials. I apologize that this was a few parts and there's a lot of information here, but I wanted to make it thorough. So I would also have this on file to retain when I need a refresher and I'm pinched for a new idea. I would like to be able to come back to this portfolio and have a fresh start of maybe something that I haven't integrated yet with my students. So I appreciate your time, and I thank you.